Welcome everyone to the latest Bolt from the Blue podcast. And of course, there's one topic on the agenda. This is a special episode, and this is the reported deal for Lionel Messi that you've been reading about. It's all over social media. You'd need to be living under a rock to avoid this, but luckily enough, it's not just me droning on with my thoughts this time. I've got two guests with me. They're the ones that you would expect. First of all, we have Prestwich Blue, Colin Savage. Colin, thank you so much for coming on.
Hello, it's always good to speak to you, Mike, as you know.
Indeed. And we also have Ray from City Fan TV. Hi, Ray. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well, mate. It's a very busy time for anybody associated with content production for Manchester City or on Manchester City, and for just general fans as well.
Okay, guys. Well, I guess we've got to start somewhere, and what I've chosen just to start off with is the fact that just as we were planning this pod, I was halfway through the Transfer Window podcast with Duncan Castles and Ian McGarry. And what they are saying and what we're reading at the moment is something that you may or may not agree with, but those guys reckon that City are going to offer Messi a 5-year deal, with the final 2 years of that deal being at New York City, that this is going to be a deal where he may even get some equity in lieu of cash. That's what makes me doubt it a little bit. As part of it. And also they're reporting that Jorge Messi has a meeting planned today, in fact, with Bartomeu to try to sort something out. And apparently, according to these guys, Ray, the only thing that is holding this up is Bartomeu himself, who is insisting that Messi has to comply with the contract and that disputed contract clause. He just doesn't want to go down as the president who lost Messi. What do you think about these things, Ray? What are your reaction to these various points?
He doesn't want to be seen as the guy who let Messi go. But on the other hand, I think a lot of this is posturing, because he wants to say, look, I did whatever I could. I did my best, guys. I offered to resign if Messi stayed. He still didn't stay. So don't blame me. I've done my best. There's nothing more I could do. But as I said, I think it's just posturing, it's smoke and daggers or whatever. The Ian McGarry and our good old friend Duncan Castles, look, I think they're right now, very much like a lot of clueless journalists out there. You can write almost anything you like. You can put a figure on a contract and add a note on it, and some people will believe you. You can throw in lots of different plays into this. You can make up whatever you want, basically. And people can't dispute it because you can't prove it's wrong. So I could turn around and say, well, Messi's going to go for a package of 300 million euros or 200 million euros or 100 million euros. No one knows. And I really don't believe the powers that be at City, if they have been discussing this, one of them has rung up Duncan Castles and said, hey, Dunk, I want to just let you in. Want to tell you a story, Duncan, about what this deal is about. I just don't believe it. There's a lot more important people to talk to. And also, there was a rumour came out that City were going to throw in a lot of players, including possibly Gabriel Jesus, Riyad Mahrez, and Bernardo Silva. Their names were mentioned. And I think City apparently came out very, very quickly and briefed certain journalists that these three players were not going to leave. So I'd rather believe the people who were briefed than Duncan Castles, who's certainly not on anybody's Christmas card list.
Okay, so let's go over to Colin Savage. Colin, do you share that skepticism? And if so, what do you think is more likely to be true?
Well, it's one of my favourite Twitter quips. But when a journalist comes out with something which sounds unlikely, my reply is always, well, of course, the first thing that Chicky Bagheeristan does when he's negotiated a deal is pick up the phone and speak to the Daily Mirror. Yeah, Duncan knows no more than anyone else, that for sure. I'm very sceptical about those figures. I think it's more likely to be in the region of 300 million over 5 years, because I think the fee will be around the 100 million mark. And just to make it clear, I know there was a lot of talk about €700 million release clause in Messi's contract, but the story seems to be, and I know having said journalists talk nonsense, I've got to be careful how I phrase this, but the story does seem to be on reliable information that release clause expired at the end of last season. So basically, Messi is worth what Barcelona can get for him, not 700 million euros. And looking at his contract, again, we don't know what he's paid. The stories are he's paid 60 million euros a year, 50 million quid, 50 odd million quid, something like that. Generally, tribunals will take the view, the Webster ruling, which was brought in because of a player trying to get out of a contract, the Webster ruling would apply to Messi's contract because he's over 28, he's been in that contract 2 years. Basically, you're looking at his final year's wages. So even if he's on 60 million, that's the value of his contract. So, 100 million around that is a good deal. So, and the story does seem to be, probably on more reliable information than Duncan's had, is that he won't be on any more than Kevin De Bruyne or any other top earner, maybe Aguero, Sterling, someone like that, which will be about 20 million a year.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, Ray, that does seem a lot more persuasive, but I'm a little bit confused because if this is in fact the case, the briefings coming out of Barcelona are very, very, very hard-headed, and they seem to be threatening litigation and the fact that we'll all have to go back to our friends at CAS. You're not convinced by that then, I guess?
Game of poker right now. I just think Barcelona bluffing. Bartomeu, he's going to get booted out next year anyway as president. Fans are really against him. He's trying to twist it around the narrative a little, and so that people blame Messi by saying I've done as much as I can. It's an interesting point though. I just want to throw out there. The lawyers apparently that are advising Lionel Messi about what to do are the very same lawyers that wrote this contract, and they've been given the boot by Barcelona. I think they were subcontracted lawyers. They've been given the boot by Barca because they're working with Messi now, and you'd like to think they know the ins and outs of the contracts and how to get once they get around it or look for any loopholes, but look to work the contract, let's say, in the way that it will suit Lionel Messi. So I just can't see the benefit to Barcelona from prolonging this. Bartomeu's like a fish out of water that's flapping around, knowing it's going to die sooner or later, and gasping for breath. And he's doing that, rather than taking a sensible option and slowly slithering back into some water and being able to breathe properly. He's just carrying on thrashing his tail around. It's a very silly analogy, but he's thrashing his tail around and just trying to show people that he's doing the best he can, and don't blame him for Lionel Messi leaving, and don't blame him for spending 400 million euros on 3 players who were they overpaid on people like Coutinho, people like Dembele, people like Griezmann, who haven't made the difference inside. It's never his fault. It's always somebody else's fault. And they don't want to accept that. Messi has been basically probably propping up this team for the last few years. But I think the time will come, and I hope it's very soon, so we can get off and move on to other subjects and get Messi in the house. I think the time will come when Bartomeu has to admit defeat. It's just such bad PR for Barcelona to push this for any length of time.
I compare it to the mathematician John Nash, who was featured in the film A Beautiful Mind. He developed a game theory, a branch of mathematics. And the way people normally describe game theory is 2 convicts get arrested, or alleged convicts get arrested for an offence, and the police have them in separate rooms, and they say to each of them, Danny, you've got choices. You can say nothing, but if your partner confesses and you say nothing, you'll get a 10-year sentence. You can split on your partner and you'll get a reduced sentence. If you both confess, you'll get something in the middle. So the convict has to decide what's the optimal outcome. Now, everyone knows the optimal outcome is both say nothing if the police have got no proof. But of course, both are thinking, what's in it for me? And this is kind of a demonstration of game theory. And as Ray said, Bartomeu, he's up for re-election in next year, March. He's got to think, what's the outcome for me? He may have given up on the election altogether. We don't know. But he's got to put himself in a position where he can say, well, I did my best to keep him, but he didn't want to stay. And it's not my fault. I don't think that's going to happen. Whatever. I think the fans of the members of Barcelona have probably had enough of him. And but in financial terms, this 700 million euro release clause we think we almost definitely think is a goner. So we talked about the potential implications, and the other thing that could happen is that either Barcelona agree a fee, it could go to CAS, FIFA have a couple of committees that look at these things, and that won't necessarily stop the transfer, by the way, because even if La Liga were to refuse to issue a transfer certificate, and the process is that the FA or City we have to apply via the FA to La Liga for an international transfer certificate, which gives us leave to complete the transfer. If La Liga fail to respond to that altogether within 15 days, the certificate gets issued. Don't think they'll do that, but they can refuse. Don't necessarily have to have a reason, they can just refuse. If they refuse, it then gets sent up to FIFA. FIFA can then say, okay, we're going to issue a provisional certificate, and then we'll decide on what happens next. So there's a number of choices. This is where game theory comes in, really. There's talk of Messi's contract allows him to leave at the end of last season for nothing. And he gave notice via this, what they call a burofax, which is a Spanish equivalent of a recorded letter to Barcelona that he was leaving. The issue around that is it would seem that the date was what we call in IT hard-coded in. So June the 10th being 10 days after the presumed end of the season, which is May the 31st. If that's the case, that could be a problem, because obviously the end of the season this season wasn't June the 10th. It only just happened towards the end of August. Or 22nd we played the Champions League final. Now, the question is, if a Swiss court, rather than a Spanish court, were to look at that clause and say, well, I know it says June the 10th, what does it actually mean? We think it means 10 days after the end of the season, that Messi could walk away for nothing. They could say, well, actually, he's not entitled to walk away for nothing because it says June the 10th, but actually we'll agree a fee, and we've got something to compare it to, because when Ronaldo left Real Madrid to go to Juve, there was a similar sort of dispute over the fee, and it was set at 100 million euros. Because Ronaldo, very similar age, last year of the contract, basically, the fee will reflect the remaining value of the contract. And that won't be more than 100 million. Might even be half that, 50 million, 60 million, I don't know. So Barcelona, again, they've got three choices. They take a risk. They can hold out, but they take a risk that Messi walks for nothing. They can hold out and get some sort of fee, but I can't see it being more than 100 million pounds, and maybe a lot less. Or they can agree a fee now and do it amicably, and they could probably get more by doing it now, because obviously they want Eric Garcia. So, quid pro quo. We can do a nice little deal which bundles Garcia into the deal, and we pay 70, 80 million, I don't know what. We perhaps do a £100 million deal, maybe a bit more, and Messi comes this way and everything goes through smoothly. So, Barcelona and Bartomeu have got to look at the risks of everything that happened, everything potentially happened. What Bartomeu the worst thing that could happen for him would be, if it goes to a tribunal, FIFA decide actually he could walk away for nothing. So he's been stupid. That would kill his election chances. So in every sense, the best thing he could do is to do a nice little deal now where he will almost certainly get more than he would do if he tried to be stupid.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Ray, I mean, it's the stance that Bartomeu and the directors at Barcelona have taken is very, very perplexing. And what was very confusing also was the Spanish Football Federation coming out and backing their interpretation of what that contract really states. What was your reaction to that one? And did you sense the fingerprints of Mr. Tebas behind that particular briefing?
Yes, Javier Tebas. Javier Tebas is a guy who makes Jabba the Hutt look like Charles Atlas. Javier Tebas, he's not for me anyway, I find him a very vile individual, always commenting about Manchester City. I don't know why he should, and as I think Pep or Khalduna said, he should focus on his own league. They've got problems there. I think Pep said that. They've got problems over in Spain, and he should focus on his own league and sorting their problems out than poking his nose in over at Man City. The fact that they've waded in, I'm shocked that they've waded in on this. I understand partly why they're doing it, because they're losing all their stars. They've lost Ronaldo a couple of seasons ago, he left. They've lost Neymar. They never thought he'd go, and they tried to stop that happening. and they got a bit of egg on the face there. To lose Messi as well, if you argue that the top 4 stars in the world football are Messi, Neymar, Mbappe, and Ronaldo, if Messi leaves, none of them are in Spain. Their TV deal comes up, I think, for renewal next season. A lot of clubs in Spain, I believe, are starting to run at a loss because of the COVID-19 situation. I think, if I'm right, 80% of the TV income goes to the top 5 or 6 clubs in Spain. Everybody's struggling financially because of COVID. A renewal of the TV deal without Messi, surely no one's going to pay anywhere near what they were paying before while Messi was there. Especially since this TV deal, Ronaldo's already left, Neymar's gone. What's there to look at Spanish football? And you can see the results as well in Real Madrid humbled by Manchester City, Barcelona battered and humiliated by Bayern Munich, only Sevilla, flying the flag for La Liga. So they're in a really perilous state at the moment. So you can understand why they want Messi to stick around, and why I think this it's basically they're firing blanks. I mean, they're firing blanks here, just trying to hope that somehow they can stave off this Messi leaving, but I just don't think they can. And here's a funny thing, for me anyway, it's a bit of a coincidence that they're coming out and making these pronouncements about Messi's contract and how, talking about this, let's call it the sanctity of the contract and on the clauses, and he's got to stick to the contract. But when a club wants to dump a player who's under contract, they don't come out and say anything. Now, Luis Suarez was told, apparently in a 2 or 3 minute telephone conversation, that his services were no longer required at Barcelona. And he's on a €14 million a year salary. And he's apparently told them, I want my salary paid up. I'm not going to go quietly. I want my salary paid up, or I'm going to stay. You're not going to get rid of me. I'm not going to, basically be transferred somewhere else unless you pay up the remaining amount of money you owe me under my contract. Why didn't La Liga say anything about that? Why haven't they come out and made a pronouncement about what Barcelona are doing to Luis Suarez, trying to bump him off and push him to one side and make him leave? Why haven't they come and said anything about that? Utter hypocrisy that they're going to say something about Lionel Messi and ignore what Barcelona are doing to their own player. We've already seen the mess they're in. Was it Vidal's left? Suarez is going. I think somebody else is. Rakitic has gone. Okay, they're some of the older players, but they're losing their stars, their aging stars, but they're losing them. It's an absolute meltdown right now, Barcelona. They can't get the players they want. Lautaro Martinez, they wanted him. It was going to be about 80 million euros. I've been speaking to an Italian journalist tonight and said, who's been telling me that the Inter president said no offer has been forthcoming from Barcelona. To be honest, I don't expect the offer to come in at all. I don't know how they're going to rebuild if they're not going to spend any money. It's an absolute diabolical mess. So La Liga, Bartomeu, and everybody else associated with it, it's just it's going to be a terrible situation for them when Messi leaves. And I hope I'll be cheering. I'll be cheering both Messi arriving and for leaving them in an absolute mess.
Yeah, I know. It's interesting, isn't it, Colin? President Bartomeu, if you think about it from a Barcelona point of view, he's really a nightmare of a president, because instead of letting this thing get sorted out with some dignity and some guaranteed cash for the huge squad build that they have on, he appears just to be digging his heels in and making it all a lot worse. Anyway, Colin, so you disagreed with the likelihood of those figures that were being bandied about, but what about the other points? How long of a contract do you think it might be, and do you think New York City FC would be factored into it in some way?
It seems that way. Again, we don't know, do we? And the talk is of potentially 3 years at City and then 2 years in New York. Maybe the other way around. I don't know. But so yeah, I mean, I've always been a little bit critical of CFG. I've said I don't see the point of it, but all of a sudden there's perhaps a point to CFG. I think because we can move someone like Messi to New York. He's still in the public eye, but even more so perhaps in the USA. So we'll see what happens. Yeah, it seems the most likely thing to do, doesn't it?
Yeah, I'm just going to stay with you for another quick question, Colin. What's your latest understanding of the Koulibaly situation, and has that at all been affected by the large finances being involved here?
My understanding is, I read two consecutive tweets. One is that we'd agreed a fee for Koulibaly with Napoli, so that's £63 million. The other is we hadn't even put an offer in. So who knows? I don't think that the question about the finances, I think there's two different questions there. One is there might be a lot of cash needed, which is the more troublesome question. We know that Sheikh Mansour could always potentially provide the cash, but we also know, I know because I was told firsthand, that the club has to run on a self-sustaining basis. So we could end up borrowing money. So yeah, Messi coming along potentially impacts from a cash point of view what we can do. I don't think it will, but from a financial fair play point of view, no, I don't think there's any issue there. The concern would be, is it using? Can we get the cash basically to do the deal?
I was going to say, Mike, I was speaking to my Italian journalist tonight about Koulibaly. We were doing a video about him, and this did come up, and the figure he was expecting was about 70 million euros, which is about 63 million quid. So that's the figure he thinks is going to be the compromise figure. He's of the opinion that probably he will leave. Napoli have got Victor Osimhen, I think 55 million euros that he cost them. How do they pay for that? They're not in the Champions League, so they dropped out from the Champions League to the Europa League. That's going to hit the bottom line, let's say 30 or 40 million euros potentially. It is a big drop from the Champions League to the Europa League unless you get right to the latter stages of the Europa League. No fans in grounds, so they're losing money there. Don't know what's going to happen next season. Even if your finances are very, very good, a drop off of about 50 or 60 million euros in a season is going to hurt. And you just paid 55 million for Victor Osimhen. Yes, Colin will say he's on amortization, and that's only going to be about 11 or 12 million euros a year, plus his salary, which is going to be, let's say, another 10 or 12 million. So it's about 25. It's not too bad. But you just missed out on about 55 or 60 million euros. So it's going to hurt. And he believes as well that there is a sale there somewhere. There's a sale there for Napoli to help them rebuild. And who is a better marketable person than Kalidou Koulibaly? And we did talk about other players that they might want to sell, like Milik, who's a very good striker for them. But it does feel like Napoli haven't got enough money to comfortably get through FFP. And Koulibaly it's another one of these where it's calling you bluff, holding out for as long as you can, which is what De Laurentiis does. I'm just hoping that City can turn around and say, look, we're buying Messi. We haven't got so much money. Messi's pretty expensive, guys. We haven't got the 80 million euros you want. Can we do a deal at 65 or 70 million? I'm expecting a deal to come in between 60 and 70 million euros, a small amount as an add-on, which they'd probably expect to get because it'll be on the basis of City winning some trophies like the Premier League or a Cup or something and the Champions League, and they'd expect in the next 3 or 4 years to get all of that, let's say 5 or 6 million euros as add-on. So my feeling is it's going to be around 65 million quid.
Okay, guys. Well, it's very interesting now, the situation that we've got among all of the in-the-knows, all of the journalists, the ones that we love so much. Pretty much everyone is agreed that this deal, however it gets done, it is going to happen. And certain people who had, made predictions about this being a 90% chance aren't looking so naive now. It looks like...
I wonder who gave that prediction, Mike.
It's just setting aside, Colin, the various details of how the contract might go and how it could be paid, how it could be financed. Let's get down to brass tacks here and ask you, how likely do you think it is for this to happen? The reason that I'm asking you that is that there's still a rump, a sort of little hardcore of sort of veteran scribes who are basically refusing to accept this for these reasons. Here's the nub of their argument. They're basically saying, and it basically amounts to, I just can't see it. I just can't imagine him not wearing a Barcelona shirt because, he's got his home there. He's got his wife and family and his friends there. We just cannot, they just cannot wrap their minds around the concept. What do you think about that? And how likely do you think it is to happen?
I think it's 90% certain to happen now.
Yeah.
I really do. I mean, we know his father's on his way to Europe in a Gulf Citation 5 jet. perhaps he'll be picking up with little Leo and bringing him with him to Manchester. There's a possibility this deal could be done by weekend. Possibility. I'm not saying it will be. Yeah, I mean, it's bizarre, isn't it? I mean, I don't know. We go back to that Suleiman Al Fahim opening day, and I know Vicky Kloss was quite busy on that day because he was quite quotable and was quite happy to give his number out and gave the people in the press team a bit of a nightmare, to be honest. And he was talking about, we're going to win the Champions League and we're going to buy Messi. And we all laughed, didn't we? And there's that Gary Cook story about how he's in London and someone said something about getting Messi. Kind of Chinese whispers. We ended up faxing a bid to Barcelona for 80 million euros to try and buy Messi. And we laughed at that sort of presumption, but it's happening. I'm 90% certain it's going to happen. Yes, it will seem strange not to see him in a Barcelona shirt because there are some players hasten to compare him with the likes of Steven Gerrard or Mark Noble or someone like that. One club players, but. There aren't that many of them these days, but to see Lionel Messi in a sky blue City shirt would be mind blowing.
I mean, it's fascinating, isn't it, Ray? I mean, the only thing that I can sort of compare it to in terms of shock value is I remember an American TV broadcast, a panel show in which the guests were asked who they thought was going to be the next president of the United States, and I think it was Ann Coulter who said she thought it would be Donald Trump, and they literally laughed her out. I mean, the audience were just in hysterics at the very suggestion. Just wrapping your mind around this, Ray, let's move on to more exciting things to talk about. And how do you think that he'll fit into Pep's system, and what sort of impact do you think he will have?
Well, I think he's versatile. He's flexible, is Leo Messi. I feel I'm not sure Pep is going to play him in just one orthodox position. We've seen he can play as a false nine. We've seen him play on the right, cutting in. I mean, I absolutely love the idea of Lionel Messi playing on the right and cutting in, jinking through defenders and slotting it into the far corner or dinking it over the keeper. I think he can play as an attacking midfielder with KDB. That's a mouth-watering prospect. That'll keep the Algerian fans happy to think Mahrez will be playing up front with Sterling and Aguero, and you've got KDB and Messi behind them, and whoever you want as a defensive midfielder. I don't think too many people are bothered about that, especially if we get Kalidou Koulibaly as well. You're not worried who the defensive midfielder is, but it's just an unbelievable prospect of where he can fit into that side. There's so many different options. And I think other people will play around him. And what kind of impact can he have? I think the fans will go crazy. I mean, I'm just trying to think of a chant. There'll be the chant. There'll be people there right now on various different City YouTubers or social media people thinking of the chants. I mean, I don't know, Leo Messi, na 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 na. I don't know. I mean, that's not very good chant, but there'll be people coming up with songs for him already. I'm probably. Last week when we spoke, Mike, I was a 6 out of 10 on this, while you were a 9. I have to say, I'm up to 8.5, 9 now. Last night I was up to 8.5. Today I feel like a 9. After talking to you guys, I can't see it not happening. I maybe even breaking into the 90s. It just looks like there's no other option. And it's looked like, to be honest, it looked like there was no option for a little while, but it just feels like it's inevitable. What's stopping it? And it would be futility and stupidity and foolishness of the highest order for Barcelona to keep fighting this. Yes, some people are stubborn and they will fight, but I think at the back of our mind, because the president is responsible, if people prove he's wasted the money, they can sue him. He can be sued personally. Bartomeu pushing this to go to court and possibly ending up losing Messi on a free. Does that mean he could be personally liable for not getting 50 million or 80 or 100 million euros on him? And he could be wiped out. So he himself has got to tread carefully. So it just makes me feel more and more positive about this deal, more and more certain that it's just posturing, call my bluff from Bartomeu, and he's just going to have to cave because it would be stupidity of Katie Hopkins proportions, if you remember that case, where she just wouldn't apologise for something and she ended up losing her house. It would be crass stupidity of that kind of proportions for Bartomeu to keep fighting this. And as Colin said, yeah, it could be by the weekend, Messi could be properly out of Barcelona and on his way to Manchester.
Well, it's interesting, Colin. I mean, the report, all of this excitement and hysteria about Messi has been put in the shade a little bit, of course, by the signing of Donny van de Beek, or was it James van der Beek, the actor? I don't know, for Manchester United, and Gabriel Magalhaes for Arsenal. But let me just throw this one at you, Colin. Are there any City players whose positions are under threat by this kind of a move, in your view?
It's difficult to say, isn't it? I mean, there was a rather sarcastic tweet from Barney Ronay talking about Phil Foden, about how that position is opened up on the left side of midfield, and now it's closed again. Well, of course, as Ray said, Messi won't be playing on the left side of midfield; he'll be playing on the right side of midfield. So you've got to look at. We don't know how we'll line up, but I guess you're looking at potentially Riyad Mahrez. And now, don't get me wrong, I like Riyad Mahrez as a player, technically superb, and he gives us something a little bit different. What I haven't done is I haven't worked out the numbers on the squad yet, so whether we can afford it. I don't think anyone would want to sell Bernardo, but let's be honest, he had a very indifferent, almost anonymous season last season. And there's always the issue that we, as I said before, the cash could be an issue. We might have to go out and raise the cash. I'd say the player who was, if any player is under threat, I would say perhaps it was Mahrez.
Mm-hmm. Over to you, Ray. Same question.
Who's under threat? I don't think Bernardo's any way, shape, or form under threat, really. Yes, his season wasn't great last season, but the season before, he was on fire. He was voted by City fans as the player of the season, and we won the domestic treble. He was the player of our season. He went to the Nations League, and he won it with Portugal being the player of the tournament, of the finals there. So, that's the level he is. If he's had a dip in form one season, so be it. He excelled the season before, and I think he deserves that opportunity to get back to where he was. Who else could be under threat? He's looking like Mahrez. If Real Madrid came in now and offered us 50 million for Mahrez, he'd be jumping at the opportunity to go, and I think we'd let him go, even at that price, because that 50 million quid on Mahrez, we paid 60 million for him on a 5-year contract. We're talking about numbers again, so he's probably worth about 36 million. If we can get 50, 55, we'll get 15 or 20 million pound profit on him. It's all good for the numbers help to stack up. So he's probably in the weakest position, just because he hasn't put in a stellar performance in a season like Bernardo did. Who else could be a threat? There's talk of Gabby J, but talking to South American journalists, for instance, they don't want to see Gabby J go. They think he's wonderful. He brings so much to the team. Maybe they don't. Maybe being offside is acceptable down in South America all the time, but all fingers point to Mahrez. You could argue, if we need to raise cash, could Gundogan go? And the Barcelona have been interested in the past. I don't think Pep wants Gundogan to leave. And, if we need cash, do we let Otamendi go? Stones? That's where I see us raising the cash, especially if we get Koulibaly at the back. And we'll be top heavy, forwards wise, but I think for 1 or 2 seasons, let's do it. I have no problem with that.
I always say with a forward, they will rarely play more than 40 games a season. We're looking to play, 60 games a season, aren't we?
Yeah.
So if you think about potentially five forwards, 4-1-3-2, you're talking about 300 games, 300 man games, if you like. So you need 7, 8 forwards. Simple as that.
I'll tell you a funny thing. We were talking about the takeover, and soon after, if you go back about 10 years, we had Balotelli, Tevez, Dzeko, and Aguero 8 or 9 years ago. So, we went through a season with those 4. Why can't we be top heavy forwards wise? And I think they'd accept it for a season or 2. What's going on? And yes, it might be that Aguero and Messi would leave in 2 or 3 years' time, and then we'll get some sanity back. But I think, I don't know. I mean, obviously, I've never been there, never will be there. But the thought of having a season with Messi, and to be told that, well, listen, you might only play 20 games this season, but you'll be playing with Lionel Messi and training with him every day. And maybe for one season, I'm prepared to accept that just to be, on the same pitch, on the same team, shaking hands and, having a brew with Messi. Just for one season, I think I'd forego a lot of games. And if it was Mahrez, he could look and say, I'll be 30 next season. I'll do a deal with City. Let me go next summer. I'll stick around to help you out, or whatever. I think there's got to be some flexibility there. But it might also come down to and at some point we'll look at this, I'm sure, the non-homegrown number of players. We're only allowed 17. Yes, we've lost Claudio Bravo. Yes, we've lost David Silva and Leroy Sané. We've picked up the goalie, Zach Steffen. Ferran Torres, if I'm right, he's 20 years old, so he doesn't count in the squads yet. And so have we got 2 more spaces left? Because Nathan Ake, he counts as homegrown because he spent his time at Chelsea. So I think we might have 2 non-homegrown spots available, and that could be Koulibaly and Messi.
Here's a question for you, Colin. I was just reading Sam Lee on The Athletic there recently, and is it true that if City were to sign Messi, they've obviously got over 40 sponsorship agreements with both global and regional organizations? Would they really be able to revisit those contracts and charge them a Messi tax?
Well, we don't know what the contracts say, but they'd be daft if they didn't. So if they couldn't, I think I've said before, I know 2013, when a possibility of a deal was on the table, we were looking at our 2 main sponsors, who were then Nike and Etihad, to double their contributions if Messi came. Now, I know I've seen some press comment that it's illogical to expect, say, Puma to do that, because we don't get the money for that, but Puma would sell more shirts. And I don't buy the argument it would only be City fans buying Messi shirts. There would be a lot of people buying Messi shirts who would not have bought a City shirt before, or all over the world. So it's a great opportunity for Puma. Etihad, I think the opportunities are probably more limited, maybe, I don't know, because I think they pay us a fair whack anyway. But they're new. You look at someone like Hayes, and maybe they're paying us 2-3 million a year for that. I don't know. But you say to them, okay, Messi's the face of Hayes. Now you're paying us 15 million a year, and we can attract. Just imagine the sponsors he'll bring with him, and new sponsors we could attract. You look at the likes of Nissan and Nexen, and all those kind of second tier sponsors we've got underneath Puma and Etihad. They would pay a lot of money. We've seen it with, as I say, Wayne Rooney and the way his agreement was set up by his agent, whereas United negotiated the deals, but they were done with the joint venture company they set up. So there's all sorts of commercial possibilities, and I'd be staggered. If we're talking about 100 million fee for Messi, let's say 120 million, 24 million amortization a year. If we're talking about wages of 20 million a year, there's only 40 to 45 million on the bottom line expenses for Messi per year. I'd be staggered if we couldn't make that back in commercial income.
Ray, just moving on to a slightly different point, what is your understanding of Pep Guardiola's contract situation, and is there any extent to which that Messi might want to link the duration of his contract to Guardiola's so that they could see out this time together? What do you think about that?
I can see the logic behind that. And I was given some information a few weeks ago. I was told that Pep was expecting or it was expected that Pep would extend his contract. This was whilst we were still in the Champions League. It's possible that would be a rolling 12-month deal, but he'd at least put an extra year on his contract. So to give that stability, to give that confidence that he's still going to be there. We saw what was happening with Manuel Pellegrini. And we all knew that he added a year extension and Pep was going to come anyway. But it was trying to get the players to not, I wouldn't say down tools, but disrespect a little bit the final year of someone's contract. So I expect Pep to, at some point soon, I expect that to be announced, that he's going to at least put a one. I mean, we don't know the exact details, but either a 1 or 2 year extension or a 1 year extension with a 12-month rolling contract. So every year he could have for instance, he could give 12 months notice. I don't think City would allow him. It just doesn't make sense to just at the end of a season say, right, I'm off. Because as Barcelona are finding out, it might not work out too well to allow that to happen. So I'm expecting him to extend, and it might just be. Here's a scenario. I mean, I don't know about this. This offer of a 5-year deal, 3 years at City, 2 years at New York City FC. But it is a coincidence that Mr. Pep Guardiola, where did he go for his sabbatical?
That's right, New York.
New York.
And of course, if Messi's coming to City for 3 years, then Pep's staying for 3 years. And
Yeah.
certainly, I heard it was a 2-year extension potentially, but whether that's true or not, I don't know.
Well, there you go. I mean, it's all conjecture because we don't know if Messi's been offered a 3 years here and then 2 years in New York City. But could you imagine Messi coming here for 3 years, Pep staying for 3 years, Messi going to New York City? Pep likes it on the East Coast of the States, and maybe Pep goes there for a couple of years, 2 or 3 years in New York. I would just throw this out there. What's left for Pep in Europe? Going back to Barca? I think that's suicidal. It will send him over the edge going back to Barcelona because they're an absolute mess. Politically, it is just the wrong thing to do. Go to France to manage PSG? I don't see the point. Italy? I just don't see it. Honestly, and it just looks like a wonderful opportunity for Pep to go to New York for 2 or 3 seasons, then maybe take over at Spain when he's in his mid-50s, late 50s. Sounds right.
Okay, Colin, we're coming to the end of this particular pod, but let's finish off and ask a listener question. Colin Savage, you and Ray, of course, are season card holders. Do you feel like with the impending arrival of the greatest footballer in the world, does your season ticket feel a little bit like a Willy Wonka golden ticket?
Well, except you can't use it at the moment, of course.
Right.
We're talking to City about getting some fans back into grounds in a month's time. But the situation in Manchester, I can't say that.
I guess they want to know how excited you are.
Yeah, I mean, if we're looking at potentially best case scenario, we get a vaccine in January and it's all hunky dory, and we can all go back and watch football. Yeah, I'll be back like a shot.
And Ray, will you be hanging around getting selfies with Messi like you've done with the other players?
Well, I certainly don't think Messi will do a selfie with me. Actually, if I manage to bag one with Messi, he'll be the first player that's shorter than me that I got a picture with. But to be honest, I mean, look, I've got to speak quietly. My missus we're in a hotel at the moment. She's got her headphones on. I've still got to speak quietly to say that we're in France at the moment, and if Messi signs, I'll be legging it back to Manchester whenever I can. Wherever we're living at the time, because to think even with the quarantine, I'll do the 2 weeks quarantine if I have to see Lionel Messi play just once. I just want to see him once wearing the blue shirt of City. Mile out to mile. It's something to tell my grandkids. I saw Messi play in Manchester for Manchester City. You can tell how excited I was by trying to sing a chant a little bit earlier. That's how excited I am. I do some silly things like that. Yeah. But it is just the thought of it is I'm drooling at it.
Yeah. I'm not sure if that particular piece of musical repertoire would beat the edit, Ray. But anyway, we'll see. We'll see. But I think we'll just draw this to a close now, guys, because I have a feeling that we might be doing another one on this self-same topic in not a very long time, because obviously things are changing. I guess the thing that everyone's interested in now is what is going to come from that discussion between Jorge Messi and Bartomeu, but that'll probably be coming up on your Twitter feeds quite soon. But let's just stop it there, guys, and say thank you very much for listening. And, of course, say thank you to our 2 contributors here. First of all, you've been listening to Colin Savage. Colin, thank you so much for coming on.
It's a pleasure. It's going to be an interesting week, isn't it?
Certainly is. And thank you so much, Ray.
Oh, it's been a pleasure as well. And as Colin says, it'll be very interesting. I mean, by the time we next speak, we might have 2 new players.
We may indeed. Okay, guys, we'll leave it there and finish off in the normal way and say we'll be back with you shortly. Until then, have one on us and up the blues.